Hey folks, I'm getting ready here to remove this planer knife and install it with a new one, a sharper one. In order to do this, I have to set the knife at a precise height that is parallel to the table. All the knives have to be set exactly to the same distance. Otherwise, you'll have one knife cutting, or just two knives cutting, and the other one not contacting the wood at all. Now, the first thing that I have to do is loosen the wedges that hold the knife in place. I have loosened all the screws, and they are completely loose. But I'm going to leave them in place on those wedges for the time being, so that just using the wedges to help keep track of them. Okay. Now I'm raising the knife leveling screws. There's 3 knife leveling screws, 2 at either end of the knife and 1 in the middle, and I'm raising that. That will help pop this wedge loose. Take that out, put that right there, and then I'll do the same over here. And sometimes the knife, when it lets go, it actually pops. So be prepared for that. This didn't happen this time, but it sometimes does. Okay, now lift the knife out and put it aside. Okay, the knife is held in a groove, and there's a lot of sawdust and chips and acampunky and what have you that accumulate in this groove when you're planing, and so you want to get it as clean as possible. I've got here a brass brush so it won't scratch the steel, and I'm scrubbing the inside. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out the leveling screws one at a time, and just a good hard blow, put the leveling screw back in, bottom it out, back it out maybe a half a turn, quarter of a turn, something like that. That removes any sawdust that may be behind the leveling screw and would interfere with the leveling. If you find that there's something in there that is not coming out with a good hard blow, take the brass brush and clean it out a little bit. There we go. Okay. Old knife is gone. Groove is clean. I'm going to get a new knife over here. And put that in place. And then I'm going to drop the wedges with the screws still attached down here. Now, these are indeed wedges. If you look at the end of them, you will see that one end is angled, okay, and the other one is square. It's the square edge that goes against the knife. The angled edge goes against the side of the cutter head. The knife is actually itself is wedge shaped. It's tapered. It's fatter on the bottom than it is on the top. So if you accidentally don't tighten these down tight enough, the knife won't fly out at you. Now I'm moving these wedges back and forth until I feel the screws drop into their particular holes, and then just sort of finger. I'm not even finger tightening them. I'm just getting them in their threads by a couple of pitches. Okay, the knife itself is about a 32nd of an inch longer than the cutter head. And I need to get this centered in the cutter head so that I can feel just a little bit of the knife leaking out over the ends. And it's there, right there. Now you'll notice that as I'm doing all this delicate work, the cutter head isn't turning at all. Because, let me show you the secret here. I've got a wedge right here. This wedge wedges in between the pulley and the right-hand side of the planer, and keeps that from turning, and I can actually make small adjustments and that cutter head will stay right there. I've stripped down this planer not only so you can see what I'm doing, but so that I can see what I'm doing. I've taken it's a Pro planer, so that it has its own motor, and I've taken the V-belt off so that I can easily turn this. You don't really need to take the V-belt off, but I find it helps, and it's not hard to get back on and off. If you have the regular planer that hooks to the Shopsmith, you can actually just get an old pulley and put it on. Take the drive hub off, put an old pulley on, and then make yourself a wedge to do this the same thing. Okay, knife is in place. Let me tighten down. Well, actually, I'm not tightening down the screws. That is where the screw starts to tighten right there. I'm going to put that down and then back that out a full half turn. Okay, see that? The reason for that is that I've got to raise these knives. I remember I just about bottomed out the leveling screws, and these knives are going to have to be raised. And if I raise them, because the knife is tapered and it's rubbing against the wedge, there will be some part where it starts to tighten up. And if I don't give it some room, I won't be able to tighten it correctly. Okay, there we go. Now, at this point, I need a measuring device to set the height of the knife above the cutter head. Now, we send you this little gauge. It's a marvelous little gauge, it really is. It hooks over the tie bar here and rests on the cutter head. Let me turn this to where we've got a knife that's an old knife that's already been set. And you'll see that this comes in and it hits the knife at a certain point as it rests on the cutter head. And what you do is you adjust that knife height so that it hits at the same point all the way across the cutter head. Now, I've done something to make this very simple. See that little triangle right there? That's just a piece of masking tape that I taped on, and then you used an X-Acto knife to cut out the triangle. That shows me the point at which I want this to hit. It could have been any point along this flat right here, but I chose the middle of it. Now, I've noticed that from doing this over the years, when I'm hitting the middle, the knife at the highest point of the arc is exactly 132 thousandths above the cutter head. 132. I'm going to do this leveling with another device here. I'm not going to use the wedge, just to show you that there are some other things out there that are a little more accurate than this jig here. This is the dial indicator that Shopsmith sells, and I've mounted the dial indicator on a magnetic base. These magnetic bases are neat. You turn this little lever, and it just locks it down. There's nothing that'll remove it now, maybe, but an act of Congress. But this also has a special tip on it. When we send you the dial indicator, we send you 22 of these tips. These are really worth their weight in gold. Not all dial indicators have removable tips, and these vastly increase the versatility of this measuring tool. You've got points and wires and roundovers and ovals and things. You've even got a couple over here that will extend the length of the dial indicator. What I have chosen for my tip is a cylinder with a nice flat on the bottom so that I can balance it right on the cutting edge of the knife that I'm trying to put in here. Let me rotate back to that knife. Put the dial indicator in here. Now I'm going to use as my reference point the edge of the tie bar. I put the magnetic mount up against the tie bar, and as you can see, I can just go back and forth along the cutter head like this. You can also see that I'm against the cutter head, but that needle is barely moving. These cutter heads are nicely machined, very accurate. I'm going to lock this in place, and I'm going to set my dial indicator. See, I can use this little knob to set it up or down. I'm going to set it for 68. Okay? Now there is a reason for that. As I've said, I've done this for a while, and I've noticed that at the highest point of the arc, the cutting edge of the knife is 132 thousandths above the cutter head itself. 132 plus 68 comes out to an even 200. So what will happen is I want, when I get the knife to the right height, I want this to spin around once to 100 thousandths and then creep up 32 more thousandths to the 0 mark. So let's see where we are with this knife right now. Let me put that there. Now I'm going to rock the knife back and forth and find the highest point in the rotation, which is right there, and take my wooden wedge and put it in place. Adjust that a little bit more so I can get to the right point. It fell off the knife. That happens. Right there. Okay, that's the high point right there, and the flat of the dial indicator is on that. Now I want to raise that knife until I'm at 0. Now I'm going to reach into the knife leveling screws and get them up, and to see where they just start to move. Okay, I moved this 20 thousandths. I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to move it 20 thousandths here, or I'm going to move it to the same spot. I'm 20 thousandths off 0, is what I meant to say. And I'm going to come down here. Now with the two leveling screws supporting this, I should be at 20 thousandths, and I am. So I'm just going to raise this one until it starts moving. There we go. Now I'll raise that to 90. It really helps to creep up on this. Raise this to 90. I'm 10 thousandths off from 0. And I'll raise this to 90. And then go past it to 95. There we go. 95 there. There. And that doesn't even need to be raised. Now, what I'm going to do at this point is just get it just within 1/1000th of 0. Give myself a little wiggle room if I need to readjust. It is much easier to come up to 0 than it is to go down to 0. I haven't had to do this yet, but I may have to, and that is actually beat on the knife to lower it if it gets stuck in the wedge. When you beat on the knife, you want a rawhide hammer, like like I have right here, so that you can tap the knife and not damage the edge. Okay, let's check all the way across here. Okay, looks good. I'm just a little lower than 0 all the way across. Let's right here. It looks like I'm right on 0. Let's go back here to the middle and bring it up just a hair. And back to the end. And just a hair here. Let's go back to this right here. Now, I'm actually a little too high on the end for some reason. Okay, I'm at 0 there, but then the knife starts to bow up. It's up about 3 thousandths. So let me turn this down just a little bit and tap it down. Sometimes, instead of reaching in there with the rawhide mallet, you can use a piece of wood, like this wooden shank of this brush. Tap that down. There we go. See, I've tapped that down 5 thousandths. Now I'll come up to it, right on 0. Let's go down here. This seems to have come up a little bit. Right on 0. It's going to be perverse. There we go. Right on 0. All right. Now, that's it. Looks like the knife it's within 2 thousandths along the length. Now I can play with this forever and not get it any closer than that. The knife may be partly bowed. Let me tap. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just barely tighten the wedges, just a little bit. Okay, I'm going to tighten the end screws of each wedge, maybe a quarter of a turn past where they're finger tight. I'm going to tap this one down again against the leveling screw. Okay, now that's at 0. That's at 0. And that's okay, or within 1 thousandths of it. And what I've done now is I'm using the wedges to hold the knife tight against the cutter head and take the bow out of the knife. So now I'm going to go back. I'm just going to go another quarter turn on the end screws. And then go back and get the middle screws. A little bit more, get those tight. And a quarter turn. Check where I am. Still pretty good. Okay. End screws. Middle screws. Still pretty level. Within 2 thousandths all the way across. Okay. End screws tightened all the way this time. and the middle screws. Okay, that's about 1/1000 off. Tighten it there. That's right on 0. Maybe just a hair low. And whoop. That's about 1/1000 down. So, knife is pretty well set. We could take it out and try it again if 2/1000 bothers you. It doesn't bother me. But that's all there is to changing out a dull knife for a sharp knife in the planer. Well, not all there is. I got 2 more of these suckers to go.